fact that he had immigrated from a foreign culture. He was a young 24-year-old textile worker from Bangladesh. His name was Al Ali. He had come to the UK with his father as a teenager and was working to provide for his family and to improve the society around him. He was returning home that night and had planned to vote because this was voting season. He had planned to vote and partake in the political process as a law-abiding citizen, only for him on his way back home to be killed by racist criminals. The Muslim community, they stood up back then. They took his coffin on their backs from Brick Lane all the way to Downing Street, and they continued to mobilize themselves for their own self-defense and the eradication of racism from their borough, from their city. You know, if Al Ali, if he had been given the chance to live, he would have perhaps been here with us today. He would have been perhaps an elderly man praying in the front row with many stories to share with us all. But in his passing, he left us with lessons that are even more important. He left us with the knowledge that Allah has placed our survival and our prosperity within ourselves. He left us with the knowledge that we must never bow and cower in front of racism, in front of hate, in front of discrimination. He left us with the knowledge that we must never adopt the mentality of a victim, because by Allah, we are not victims. Rather, we are strong, we are resilient, and we are capable of overcoming any challenge that is placed in front of us, as we always have. Our history is filled with examples of perseverance and triumph, and we will continue to stand firm against those who seek to harm us. Or as in the words of the 7,000 people that marched against racism, carrying his body with them to Downing Street, we are here to stay. We are here to fight. How exactly do we fight back? This is the question. This is what we as a Muslim community need to understand and need to follow. How exactly do we confront and address the hate and the racism that surrounds us? How do we maintain the peace that we have fought so hard for all of these last few decades? I want to leave us with a few points and a few reminders, especially for the youth. It was the youth who undertook this task back then, and it is the youth who will have to undertake this task today. First and foremost, we never resort to senseless violence in response to the ignorance that surrounds us. The solution to ignorance is education, not violence, not senseless violence. Senseless violence goes directly against what our deen teaches us and gives our enemies the ammunition that they so desperately seek. But Allah Azza wa Jalla, He reminds us in the Quran, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. For those people who do not fight against you in your faith, they do not eject you from your homes and your life, then certainly Allah Azza wa Jalla does not prevent you from showing kindness to them, from being just to them. Certainly Allah loves those who are just. This, before anything else, is a religion of justice. This is the only religion, the only faith, the only way of life that embraces people no matter where they come from or how they come. This is why this religion is not just one of Arab. It's not just one of the Arabs, nor is it just one of the Asians, nor is it just one of the Europeans or the Africans, but it belongs to all of us together. Many of the brothers and sisters that we have sitting right here in this majlis, in this gathering today, are themselves British, that Allah Azza wa Jal guided to Islam, that are now standing for this faith and standing as some of the most firm, devout believers among us today. Number two, we must learn our deen properly, and we must reflect on our purpose and our identity. What is it that brings such hate for Muslims? What is this potent way of life that Shaitan is so desperately trying to prevent others from realizing and following, that Allah has just blessed to place upon our laps collapsed. How can we stand up for our faith if we do not even know it to begin with? How can we implement the numerous lessons it teaches that can fix this society if we do not know our deen to begin with? Many of the youth that are here today, you are here on your holidays. School is off. How are you utilizing this time if you are falling into the same things such as drugs and crime that lead the people around us to see us in a negative light? Then you are part of the problem. You are not from us, because we are a positive force in society. Rather, we should be using this time that we are off to learn more about our deen and to teach others about it as well. Number 3, we must unite as Muslims, and we must stand together against the hate. This hate is directed towards all of us, not just some of us. Those that killed Al-Tab Ali, they did not differentiate his nationality when they were doing so. When they were charged and they were brought to trial in the court, they were asked and they were questioned, why did you kill him? And they responded that he was just a panic. Just that he was a panic. This is the only word that they know. This refers to all of us. This refers to Muslims. This refers to if you put your head on the ground in worship of Allah Azza wa Jal. There is no difference between us, no matter what your race is, what your color is, what your language is. We are all Muslims for the sake of Allah, and so we must stand together for the sake of Allah, for ourselves, for one another. We need to put aside our internal differences and stand together as Muslims. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold together to the rope of Allah, to this deen, to the Quran, to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, together, and do not divide in between yourselves. Number 4, we should not be afraid to raise our voices against those that seek to harm us. We should not be afraid to raise our voices and defend ourselves through peace and justice. We need to speak up and advise politicians from all sides of the political aisle. Those who on the right tell us that we need to stop the votes as racism. Or they speak about Muslim women as letterboxes. Or those on the left who tell us that we need to deport certain Muslim ethnicities. We need to raise our voices and speak up against them all. We need to speak against the media pundits that spin a narrative against Muslims that is completely false and puts us in danger. And we need to do the same against social media personalities that want to use this hatred for their own popularity, not caring for the loss of life and the harm that comes along with it. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, أفضل الجهاد كلمة عدل عند سلطان جائر. The best form of jihad, struggle, fighting in the path of Allah, is to speak a word of justice, a word of truth in front of a corrupt authority. Number 5, we should not be afraid to teach the deen and to speak of its values. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says that certainly He revealed to us dhikr, remembrance. رَسُولًا يَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ مُبَيِّنَاتٍ لِيُخْرِجَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. This message of Islam takes us out of darkness and into light, and we should never be afraid to present it properly the way that it has come to us, to those that are around us. One of my closest friends is a person who is of British ancestry, and he himself comes from the far right. And when I asked him, what is it that brought you to Islam? He told me that when he looked around in his society, he saw the fall of traditional families.